Journal of Syra Fawn. Year unknown. Time unknown. Legend says that Grand Island used to be a great mountain called Mount Sophia. Story goes that we all descended from a race who lived in a great world that was in the air, all around us. But there was a great fire in heaven. Sophia was a wise queen who opened a doorway in the earth so her people could escape. After the last of them got through, the earth closed up on her, trapping her inside the mountain. Her people wanted to help her, but she insisted they leave her be, lest the fire get them too. There's a hill up in the center of Grand Island that people climb sometimes, and the natives say they used to hear voices coming from up there. I never heard it, but some say you can hear them, and it's Sophia pleading for us to keep on running. Legend says that one day the mountain will sink again, and time will start all over again. Fa tells me not to believe such stories, but some of my friends think it's true. Journal of Sophie Mabry, September 4th, 2119, United North America. According to the archives, everything changed after the last Great War. Although it's hard to know what to believe these days. My grandmom used to say that before the bombs fell, she actually knew people who weren't chipped. I believe her. My school had some old news archives from 2044 when the first people were augmented. That was back when ether was called the internet, when there were parts of the world that weren't covered, and if you were even in range, you had to manually connect to it. I guess it was a choice. And if you didn't want it, you could just go offline. Something always told me something was wrong about it. Even when I was little, kids were born and chipped before they even left the hospital. Just like Dad said I was. I always felt like it should have been a choice, though. Who made this rule? Grandmom told me once that she thought so too. Then she got this scared look in her eyes, and after that she just acted like she never remembered saying it. So I had to let it drop. I couldn't blame her. I still don't. But it's true, you know. It should be noted that I'm writing this on a special device my friend made for me. It's based on old technology from the mid-2000s. Kinda reminds me of the old tablet Dad used to have, except it's big and super clunky. No neuro in or anything like that. Just little square keys that you have to manually type with. But it's off the ether, and it works for journaling purposes. My friends are like me. They don't agree with the government. But if anyone ever finds out what we did, we'll definitely go to prison, or worse. We're already taking ridiculous risks. No one removes their implant. Who would try? Once it goes in, that kind of thing could kill you. Instantly. It's not like you can just unhook it, but Fox, he found a way. All our families think we're dead. Everyone probably does. But that's the way it has to be. Because if they can track our real names, they might find out what we're planning to do. In case you didn't guess, Sophie is not my real name. I heard that back in the days before the bombs fell, there was a group of people who thought like us. They were a small faction leading a resistance against what they called the oligarchy. They said the concept of capitalism had become corrupt and spiraled out of control, that the corporations were controlling the world agendas by rigging things. Me and Hydra used to play this one game when we were kids. When she would sleep over, we'd pretend we were living outside the ether and had to hide from everyone. Back then it was just a silly game, but we pretended we were almost like superheroes. We had play names and everything. Even then, she was Hydra, and I was Soph. I never would have thought things would turn out like this, though. Anyway, our group techie, who calls himself Fox, used to be a sapio, and I guess all this started because he sidestepped into a locked federal archive just before he went offline. He has a copy of an official document authorizing the formation of a private entity that was set up to fund all the branches of the government. He says the system was collapsing and they thought they needed something else to sustain it. I guess the main corporation stepped in. He said they formed a committee of representatives from 9 of the world's biggest multinationals. One of them was a fossil fuels company, another one was in telecommunications, which was like an early form of the ether. But there was this kind of malevolence to it, though. Fox said the document, drafted on paper in 2042, actually gave these corporations the power to withhold all funding from the government if it ever passed legislation they didn't approve of. I guess CEOs could shut down the government if the politicians ever crossed them. It's something all 9 of us thought in the back of our minds when we were kids, but we could never prove it until Fox saw it for himself. I'm almost sure we're going to be caught eventually. I haven't told Hydra just how scared I am, but I think I know she feels the same way. We all just have an unspoken agreement to not talk about it. If I die, if something happens to me, or if someone else finds this document, I can't prove it to you yet, but we're going to find a way to get this message out. That's our plan, and we're working on it. In the meantime, just open your eyes, look around, and pretend you're seeing the world for the first time. Things aren't what they seem. Untitled entry, unspecified author, unspecified date. Our little girl was born yesterday. We've been so busy between the move and Ava trying to recover and dealing with our unique problem on top of that. Sierra's 6 pounds, 7 ounces. The most beautiful green eyes I've ever seen. Like 2 little orbs of sparkling jade. Little Sierra Sophia. Maybe she'll be president. You never know. She hasn't cried once yet. The doctors say that could be a sign of autism, but with all the methods to cure it when you come of age, it's not that much of an issue. She seems really responsive and so clever, it's almost creepy. The real medical issue, though, is that Sierra's cerebellum is shaped differently than most kids. Doesn't sound like it poses any threat to her. It's just causing problems with them chipping her. We have to wait until next week so the med staff can figure out how. But they're keeping it pretty low-key until they're sure it's going to be successful. Anyhow, the condition itself shouldn't cause any cognitive impairment. It's not lacking structurally. It's just technically bigger than normal. I wonder what that'll mean for her. I guess only time will tell. Journal of Bastian Whitaker, May 25th, 2110, Scott City, Kansas, United North America. Oh, the news changed the world when it first broke. I wasn't even born yet, though. This guy was called Darren Goddard. He was a professor of genetics. There had been news they were low-key working on a cure for like 15 years. But when he and his team at University of Iowa made the breakthrough, I guess everybody was jumping. Granddad said it was the first major discovery since the war, and it made people proud knowing an American had done it. But it caused a lot of controversy. A lot of people said immortality would cause overpopulation or lead to extinction, and it was a strong enough concern for the government to cap off pregnancies. That's why you have to sign up to have a child, and only certain people can do it. Guess it was actually a huge issue when it happened. Some pro-naturals were rioting in the western states. Noah says it was actually a bigger deal than they let on, and the government just didn't want to make it public because it would make things harder for people. Noah and I grew up in Wichita, near New Fayetteville. Being on the coast so close to the old Midwest kind of becomes a part of who you are. We were talked up almost like we were the people of the new frontier. It was like a model for the rest of the country in some ways. I don't know the exact year the New Madrid fault line went out. I should, but I do know some about it. I think it was between 2046 and 2050. That was back before the war when the top half of the UNA was called the USA, and there were a whole lot more states back then than there are now. The capital was on some coastal city down in Virginia, and I guess it was in its own separate jurisdiction. There used to be this state called Arkansas and one called Mississippi, and there was a whole southern tip of Illinois that I guess slid off into the ocean whenever all this happened. Archives say it only took between 7 or 8 years for it all to sink, and they called it the worst tragedy of human history back when it was still happening. I think the last earthquake was in 2058. When I was little, tourists would go diving off the coast of Missouri. That was before it became illegal. But I guess there's still cities and towns under there, because I've seen videos of the skyscrapers that are underwater. I guess tourists would swim right through the streets, but it was really dangerous because the buildings weren't very stable. Some of them were almost a kilometer down. The risk for fatal decompression at those depths can be really great. You also have to be careful where you dive, because some of those lost cities had nuclear reactors, and that's why there's so much radiation in the oceans now. Anyway, the first immortal's name was Gemma Howard. Everybody knows about Gemma Howard. She works for Nuna News now and lives in Wyoming. But when she was 41, they did the procedure, and she got famous straight out, because she was really sick with Ewing's sarcoma. And when they did the procedure, it cured her. I guess they kept showing her pics on YouTube, and every week she would look 3 or 4 years younger, so they knew it was working. Finally, it tapered off at age 21, and she just stayed like that. Of course, that's because when you're 21, the telomeres in your DNA start getting shorter, and they signal the cells to die faster, but they didn't know that back then. Gemma stayed 21. If it hadn't been for that discovery, we probably never would have had ladder mods or sapios either. That's what my brother Noah is. He's a sapio. Most boys want to be meds or physios, but not him. Noah has an IQ of 316. He works for the feds to help solve murder cases, and is notably proficient at it. He just walks into a crime scene and looks around and knows exactly what happened straight away. It's top choice. Back when he lived at home, sometimes he'd help me do questionable things, like when I wanted to sneak out to party. He'd help tell me exactly what to say to Mom so she'd let me go, but I wouldn't have to lie to her. I don't know if she's ever figured it out for sure. Maybe I'll explain it to her if I become successful, then she can laugh at it. Right now my IQ is only 119, but it shouldn't matter too much. Noah's was only 126, and he's one of the top sapios in the FBI. Otherwise, I'd probably consider becoming a historian. I have 4 years before I have to decide for good. Journal of Captain Fox, April 12th, 2114. I've seen things I wish I could unsee. The worst part is I don't know who to trust anymore. Am I having a psychotic break? The old maxim, is that as long as you're still asking, you're probably still sane. But deep down, I wonder. It's just tough to know for sure. If I'm really honest with you, I don't think I can bring myself to let this go. Last week I dug out my old tablet computer from when I was a kid. I took out the GPS. That's how I'm writing this right now. It's nuts, I know. Something just tells me I have an obligation. It can't be a half measure either. I could never lie to myself like that. No, this has to be big. I think I know what I have to do. Reminds me of a poem I read once. And thus rots the calming fruit, but in so doing, nurtures seeds cast down from Eden. Release me now to the mortal's tempest, to seek an isle where such flowers bloom. Entry April 18th, 2114. I removed it. I figured out a method of getting the fibers to unbond with my nerve tendrils. Highly dangerous and highly painful. 1 millimeter in any direction and it probably would have killed me, but it worked. After bending out the tabs, I was able to gently pull it out. Even with the thing dislodged, it was the most blinding pain. I vomited and I passed out for some period of time. I don't know for how long. I have to move fast. Before I unchipped, I learned about an old abandoned city near the coast of Missouri that's off the ether, but still has electricity. I can't write down where it is, but I think I can make it. There are freshwater lakes in that region, so there should be water sources and probably wild animals. I guess I've made my choice. There's no going back now. I'll leave after sunset. April 23rd, 2114. I made it. I saw that the city used to be called Independence back before the flood. I think it's fitting, or at least I hope so. There are many wild dogs out there, and you have to be highly careful, but I've made a crude bow and was able to shoot one for meat. I'm in the process of setting up shop in an old TV station, and I'll try to get the tower functional. My plan is to rig it to broadcast only audio, since some people still use the UHF bands for emergency radio. On my way in, I found an old winery, so if I'm ever hard up, there's an abundance of sweet grapes for hydration. I filled up a few satchels on the way in and took a few bottles of wine. I started making a crude condensation collector today to have as a backup. Tomorrow I'll finish that and go look for a primary water source. There's an old office building just a few blocks from here. I'll go check it out for components, see what I can rig up. Entry corrupted. January 2016 or 2017. Sophie's had her convinced be okay. We knew she was, but I had no idea this would happen. She caused the feed to run backwards, knocked them all over, affected their sense of balance. They just fell over. I know it. They're like toy soldiers. We got inside, got it uploaded. I have a newfound faith. Stratagem corrupted. Journal of CMS Jacob Williamson, 18th of January, year unknown. They're still alive. Major West called me at around 0600 this morning. I had to fly promptly back to Whiteman Air Force Base. They had a debacle there at around 0500. From what they told me, their communications went down for almost 30 minutes. Sentries got off a few pop shots, but couldn't hit any of them. I don't know why we even still ship these kids off to basic. I informed the vice chief and requested a meeting with the Joint Chiefs, but by the time we meet, I need to know something. I don't know how they got into that complex. How did they... Seriously, 47 armed sentries? Staffy swore up and down that nothing was missing from that compound. But you don't break into a bunker full of armed guards unless you're after something, right? What were they looking for? Journal of Ethan Sarver, 21st of December, 2127. I finished my ghosting hack. I think it hides my outgoing signal. Rachel tested it for me and said it was working. This should keep anyone from detecting what archives I view. The problem is, if your signal stops for too long, you keep hanging around people, someone is going to notice. I doubt you can really hide that. She's with me 100%. I think she'll come with me if I do what I'm considering. We heard talk of a group of people who were hiding out off the coast of an old city called Independence. Story was that there was an emergency broadcast, like 10 years ago, off one of the old UHF channels the government kept in the event of disasters. But it went down after 3 weeks of continuous transmission, and no one knows what happened to them. I guess it was channel 110. It played the same 3-hour feed on a loop. Deal is, that channel doesn't exist anymore. So I thought it was either a fable or the government shut it down. But Rachel told me she heard one of the recordings. She got teary-eyed when I brought up the subject. She said she never told anyone that before. We both want to find out. She said they claimed to have a stockpile of old powder guns, and they called themselves the Natives. What happened to them? That's what we want to know. 18th of January, 2128. I can't believe it. We actually made it. Well, more like they found us, but still, it's all true. Everything Rachel said was true, and I got to help them today. This guy Fox was really intrigued by my hack. He thinks it works, but he wouldn't really tell me why. He said they only found us by coincidence, though. He said the light from our campfire was glimmering off some glass window from like 2 stories up. Their guard, Darian, happened to notice it. We were only a few blocks off from them. Anyway, I gave him the copy of the hack, and he said it would help them substantially. I only realized how weird that was, like 20 minutes ago. I thought they weren't chipped, and that was the reason for all this scandal. But if they're not chipped, then why do they need the hack? Oh well. They say this guy used to be a top Sapio in the FBI, so I guess I'll just trust that he knows what he's doing. If I get half a chance, maybe I'll ask him tomorrow. Journal of Commander Mathis, C13A6, 21st day of Season 3, hour 0300. Attached message to Mayday signal. Our mission was on Earth. We were attempting to survey the trench off the backside of Saints Ridge, in the middle of the American continent. We know from density scans that it's at least 5 miles deep, but we don't know what's at the bottom of it. A geological formation like this could yield some exposed layers from millions of years back, which may tell us if there was ever life on the planet. We were over 5 miles down when we clipped the eastern face, and an outer stabilizer went out. I woke up in the snow, and I don't know how long I was unconscious. There is blood. The crew didn't survive. The captain's dead. It's cold here. I don't think I'm going to make it. Talia, if you ever hear this, I don't regret taking this chance for this discovery. My only regret would be if this Mayday can't escape the trench. I will probably never see you again. I hope someone comes for me. Personal logs, C13A6, 21st day of S3, hour 0900. I had to abandon the ship. I thought if I was going to die in there, I might as well take my chances. I've been walking for 2 hours. The snow's actually melting as I go deeper through. My readings have gone up 2 Celsius since I left the wreckage. It must be a geothermal vent. But I'm hearing the strangest frequency in my scanners. It's like a low and constant warbling. I just have to follow the warmth to survive, and maybe I'll find out what that sound is. Personal logs, C13A6, hour 0930.
C13A6 to Orpheum. You're not gonna believe this. It's bathed in blue. I don't even know how to describe this. You just have to see it.